Chapter 3. More Warnings. Every day now, more and more people arrived at the digging fields of the Palouse Prairie. This was a very good place for digging cows. It was also a very good marketplace for traders. Friends from the north traded skins of bear, beaver, and mink from the mountains where they lived. Friends from the west traded their special cedar bark baskets. In return, Kaya's people traded deer and elk skins and the delicious dried salmon that everyone wanted. And every day Kaya kept a lookout for the arrival of Salish traders. She hoped they'd take Two Hawks back to his family. But as others arrived, there was no sign of anyone from his country. Weren't they going to come to the Palouse this year? Kaya visited Lone Dog and her pups every day. Often, as she approached the nest, she found Lone Dog sitting beside it, gazing in her direction. The dog seemed to be waiting for Kaya now, and sometimes it seemed to her that Lone Dog smiled as she ran the back of her hand along the dog's muzzle. "You know I want to be your friend, don't you?" Kaya asked quietly. And Lone Dog wagged her tail as if to say, "Eh, I want to be your friend too." One morning when Kaya was coming back from visiting Lone Dog and her pups, she heard the crier calling out that a new trader had arrived. He had come from far away, where the big river flows into the sea. Quickly Kaya's grandfather, dressed in his best hide shirt and leggings, wrapped his deerskin robe over his shoulders, and went to meet the man. Her grandfather was a shrewd trader. He took with him kamas cakes, buffalo hides, and bundles of tools, things that people from the coast would be sure to want. All day Kaya looked forward to Paleka's return. Her grandfather would have many stories to tell, and he might have heard something about speaking rain. Slaves were sometimes traded to other tribes. Could her sister have been traded to people from the west? Pilaka didn't ride back for a long time. When he did, there were big packs tied onto his pack horses. Two Hawks was helping Kaya's father coil up hemp rope for trading. Tota and Two Hawks hurried with Kaya and the others to crowd around Pilaka. Tota motioned for everyone to be seated. Then Pilaka opened up a pack and showed them what he'd gotten in trade with the man from the coast. First, he handed around a few special beads he'd got in exchange for a fine buffalo hide. Kaya held one of the precious beads in her palm. It gleamed a deep blue, as if she held a piece of the evening sky. Oh, it was beautiful. Kutsa held up another blue bead to the light, but instead of smiling, she frowned. "These beads are a lovely color," she said slowly, "but I think our bone and shell beads are best for our clothes. I like the old ways." "For you, old is always better," Pilaka teased in his deep voice. "Old ways are safe ways," Kutsa said stubbornly. Pilaka took a very small pouch from his bundle and placed it in her lap. "Then here's something that will please you," he said. Kutsa opened the pouch and lifted out a strand of glistening dentalium shells. As she held up the valuable shells for everyone to admire, her face lit up like sun shining after a storm. "You did well," she said to Pilaka. Brown Deer's face was alight too. "Some of those shells would be beautiful on a dress," she exclaimed. "Eh, on a dress for a young woman who hopes to marry soon," Kutsa added with a smile. "These shells are just the decorations we need." The trader told of many beautiful new things, Pilaka insisted. He told of cloth dyed the brightest red he'd ever seen. Kutsa's eyes grew wide. "Where did he see bright red cloth?" she demanded. The trader said men in huge boats, men with pale hairy faces, had such cloth, Pilaka admitted. Kutsa folded her arms over her chest and drew herself up tall. "Listen to me. I want to tell you something," she said in her most serious voice. Tota gestured for everyone to pay attention. Kaya and Brown Deer put down the beads. The twins stopped whispering to Two Hawks and turned toward their grandmother to hear what she had to say. When Kutsa had everyone's attention, she began to speak. "One night not long ago, I had a vision. In my vision, I was holding a piece of bright red cloth. Then, as I held it, the red cloth vanished, and my hand was red with blood." She turned to her husband. "My vision is a warning. Harm will come to us from the men with pale faces." Kaya shivered. Her grandmother had told them she had her visions before. They were given to her so she could help protect the people. Pilaka and Tota nodded solemnly. They always respected Kutsa's visions. But out of the corner of her eye, Kaya saw Two Hawks turn to look at the arrival of more new traders riding by with their many pack horses. After a moment, he jumped to his feet. "Sit, Two Hawks," Tota said sternly to him. "Pay attention to your elders." Two Hawks sat again. Kaya could see that he was trying hard to be respectful, but he was almost too excited to hold still. "Tell us," Pilaka said, "what's troubling you?" "I think those traders are Salish," Two Hawks said. "They're hauling high teepee covers like my people use, and I think I recognize that big black horse. Maybe those men know what's happened to my family. Can't we follow them?" Tota stood up right away. "Get your horse," he told Two Hawks. "Kaya, come with me on my horse. Let's see if these men are Salish." He put his hand on Two Hawks' shoulder. "If they are, we'll trade this boy to them for a worn-out moccasin." "That would be an even trade, wouldn't it?" Two Hawks grinned at Tota's joke. Then his glance caught Kaya's and his smile dimmed. She saw that he was very happy, and also a little sad. Of course he wanted to get back to his home again, but now he felt at home with her people too. The traders were setting up their camp on the eastern edge of the cluster of teepees. Tota signaled a greeting to them as they rode up, but Two Hawks reined his horse and circled around behind Tota as if he were feeling shy. A young trader stepped forward, shading his eyes against the setting sun. Tota threw him the words, "This boy is Salish. Do you know him?" The trader squinted up at Two Hawks and beckoned for him to ride closer. After a moment, the trader shook his head. It had been a long time since Two Hawks was taken captive, and the man didn't recognize the boy. But Two Hawks recognized him. He slipped off his horse and ran to the young man. Two Hawks threw his arms around the man's waist and pushed his forehead against his broad shoulder. Then they were both laughing and talking at the same time. When Kaya and her father joined them, Two Hawks turned to them excitedly. "This is my uncle, my mother's brother," he cried. "He says my parents are alive and well. My sisters are well too. He'll take me home with him." "Tots," Tota said. "Two Hawks, ask your uncle to share a meal with us. We have much to talk over with him." Eats a preparative meal of kushmush, berries, and deer meat. Afterward, the men talked. Because Two Hawks spoke both Nimipu and the Salish language of his people, he acted as interpreter. Sometimes they used sign language, too. Kaya closely followed what they said. Two Hawks told of his time as a slave of enemies from Buffalo Country, and of his and Kaya's escape, and how Tota had found them on the Buffalo Trail. Young Uncle told of everything that had happened to Two Hawks' family while he was gone from them. Tota made plans to join some Salish men to hunt buffalo in their country to the east, and they agreed to meet again the next day to trade with each other. Then Tota asked about Speaking Rain. Had young Uncle seen or heard of his little daughter, a blind girl? She'd been a captive too, but she might have escaped or been traded. Was there any news of her? Young Uncle frowned sadly. "I have not heard of the girl you describe," he said with his hands. Kaya clasped her hands tightly to keep from crying. But now Two Hawks turned to look her in the eye. "You helped me and brought me to my family," he said to her. "I give you my word that I'll try to find your sister and bring her to you." Kaya blinked back her unshed tears. Two Hawks was her friend after all. "Katsi Yao Yao," she said to him gratefully. Then Two Hawks and young Uncle spoke together for a little while. Two Hawks turned to Tota. "My uncle gives you his pledge too," he said. "When it's time for salmon fishing at Cielo Falls, some of my people will join your people there. Maybe we'll have news of your daughter then." Tota nodded. He threw young Uncle the words, "Thank you for your help." Kaya glanced at her mother. Itza sat with her head bowed, her lips pressed tightly together. Kaya saw the sadness in her father's face too. She understood that to lose a child was a terrible thing, and to lose a sister was terrible as well. Two Hawks leaned toward Kaya. "I asked my uncle about your horse with the star on its forehead," he said. "He hasn't seen your horse, but we'll be on the lookout." "Katsi Yao Yao," Kaya murmured for a second time. Then she got to her feet and moved away from the others. All the bad news she'd heard tore at her heart, and soon 2 Hawks would be leaving too. Where could she find comfort? She knelt beside her sleeping place and slipped Speaking Rain's buckskin doll out of her pack. As she clutched the doll to her chest, she thought of Lone Dog. She remembered how Lone Dog had licked Kaya's hands when she'd visited her that morning. So Kaya tucked the doll away again, put some scraps of food into her bag, and headed toward the hillside where Lone Dog had her den. As Kaya came near the den, she called softly, "Here I am, girl. I'm back again." She saw Lone Dog's gold eyes watching her, then the pale tip of her wagging tail. Kaya knelt and parted the grass in front of the nest. The puppies were sleeping in a heap by their mother's side. Lone Dog lifted her head, pricked her ears, and gazed long and hard into Kaya's eyes. "Are you telling me you know I'm sad?" Kaya asked the dog softly. She placed the food into the nest, and Lone Dog ate without getting to her feet, as if she didn't want to disturb her sleeping pups. After Lone Dog had eaten, Kaya leaned closer and stroked the dog's ears and the soft fur under her jaw. She sank her fingers into the thick coat on her back and scratched. "You always let me touch you now," she said to Lone Dog. "Would you let me touch your puppies? You know I won't hurt them. I'm their friend, too." Moving slowly, Kaya gently stroked the largest pup's warm head with her fingertip. Would Lone Dog growl her away? Panting lightly, Lone Dog looked on calmly. Then, as Kaya watched, the pup's eyelids parted for the first time. His milky blue eyes seemed to be looking right at Kaya, but she knew he was too young to see her yet. That unseeing gaze reminded Kaya of her blind sisters, and she remembered the lullaby she and Speaking Rain loved so well. "Ha-no-he, ha-no-he," she sang softly to the puppy. "Here's my precious one, my own dear precious one." As Kaya sang, the other puppies began to stir and whimper, crawling against their mother, wanting more milk. Kaya watched the peaceful scene, the ache in her heart easing. She'd been right to come here. Crack! A stick broke, then the long grass bent down and rose again. Kaya sat up quickly. The twins! She could see the tops of their dark heads in the grass. They were sneaking up the hill, playing hunters with their small bows and arrows. "Boys," she hissed, "stay away. This dog might think you'll hurt her puppies and—" Wingfeather jumped to his feet. "Puppies!" he cried. Sparrow sprang upright too. "Can we see them?" he asked. Before Kaya could stop them, the boys ran up the slope and fell to their knees beside her. "Keep back," she said. "Lone Dog doesn't know you." She held out her arm to keep the boys away from the nest, and they settled down upon their heels, gazing wide-eyed at the pups. "She always protects her puppies," Kaya told the boys. "I'm not sure she'll trust you." If they came too close, would the dog threaten them with a growl, or lunge at them as she had at Snowpaws? But Lone Dog didn't seem at all worried by the little boys. Her gaze took them in, then returned to Kaya. Brown Deer had said Lone Dog might have bitten a child or nipped at a baby. Surely Brown Deer is wrong, Kaya thought. Lone Dog knows the twins are no danger to her pups. Sparrow was inching closer to the nest. He reached out toward one of the pups, but Kaya caught his hand in hers. "You mustn't touch them," she said firmly. "Why not?" Wingfeather asked. "Dogs like to be petted." Kaya thought for a moment. Lone Dog wasn't like the other dogs. Kaya had come to trust Lone Dog, but others thought she might be dangerous, and Kaya couldn't prove that they were wrong. Her grandmother had warned her to be cautious around the dog, and Kaya must take good care of her little brothers, no matter what. "Listen to me. I want to tell you something," she said to the twins. She hoped her voice sounded like her grandmother's when she commanded attention. The twins looked up at her right away. "Lone Dog trusts me," Kaya said. "That's why she lets you two near her puppies. But I'm not sure what she'd do if I weren't with you. To be safe, you mustn't come here by yourselves. Do you hear my warning?" She looked right into their eyes. After a moment, the little boys nodded. "Taught," she said to them. "Don't forget what I told you. Now come with me. We need to get back to camp."